This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland. Watch it now on Prime Video.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show, and now I am pleased to introduce to you a good friend who is, as I was saying earlier, one of the top political analysts in the country. Believe it or not, he was the head of the Republican Party in California. That's a tough job. And I think, Tom, did you tell me you debated Kamala Harris?
I did debate Kamala Harris way back.
I hope you kicked her butt.
I did win the posted debate poll, which we thought at the time was a big deal, but now that everybody knows who she is, doesn't seem so big anymore.
So tell us quickly about your new book that is about the American Revolution and the American story.
Yeah, the lessons of the American civilization. What I do is I talk about the arc of American history from the 1500s all the way to last year. And look, one lesson we need to learn is that power centralizes and then bureaucracy takes hold. And that's what America's experiencing today. And I tell people, King George didn't smile when we came to take away his power. And that's what you're seeing in today, is it not? They are fighting tooth and nail, but there's two things that matter here. One is, you and I have talked over the years about the size of government is simply crushing economic growth, right? Yes. You cannot have the government at 40% of the economy with regulations. And that lowers people's standard of living. But also all this every power that government gains comes at the cost of personal freedom. And the thing about that is our founders understood the value of freedom, and that freedom is a value. The value of freedom is, in and of itself, they wanted us to be free because they saw what centralized power did throughout history. And that's a lesson that's been lost.
It has. And it's the reason my ancestors and my grandparents came to America from Ireland and Germany, and probably are you Italian, Tom? With DelBaccaro, you've got to be
Italian, all up and down the Italian peninsula. We are, and we came for.
Is it one of these Sicilian things? You're not Sicilian, are you?
I'm half Sicilian, but we don't talk about it. But I'm half. But it's the same thing. Everybody came here for opportunity,
of course, and freedom, be left alone. To be left alone from government, bureaucracy, and kings, and the bondage of what was happening in Europe and so many of these other countries, and yet you and I talk about this so much, Tom. Tom and I have been friends for 20 years. That why is it that we as Americans are so willing to give up our freedoms that we've fought so hard for to attain?
Yeah, and we did a couple hundred years ago but we've become so rich. And I talk about this in my book. Starting in the 1950s, America did something which few civilizations have ever done, and certainly no large civilization has ever done, which is starting in that period of time. Americans were spending more money on non-essential items than essential items. That's how much wealth capitalism in America created. So literally,
and that was probably the first time in history that it ever happened anywhere, right?
Yes, and certainly for anything of great size. I mean, you can make arguments about small places in history, but anything of this size.
Yes.
More than 50% of our spending was on non-essential items.
Right. Like leisure and going to the movies and taking vacations and things like that. So you had discretionary income. Right.
Yes. But today, and a decade later, what happened? We started the war on poverty, and government started to explode in real terms. And where are we today? Where 60-some% of Americans live within 3 weeks. Why is that?
Terrible.
Because government burden has grown so much, and that's really what the Trump fight is about, and what Secretary Bessent talks about. We have got to take this burden off the economy, privatize it, and get economic growth above 3 and 4%. We cannot make it as a country at 2%. It won't work. We're going to go bankrupt.
Yeah. And by the way, the Congressional Budget Office and the blue chip economists are predicting 1.75% growth. That you can't get from here to prosperity with a growth rate that small. Now, as you know, the historical average for economic growth in this country for the last 100 years has been about 3.2%, as my buddy Larry Kudlow always says. So if we can get back up to that level, which is not, a moonshot, then things look a lot better for the country, because as what was it? Albert Einstein said the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. So the compounding of that faster rate of growth will actually reduce the debt, reduce the deficit, and make Americans a lot richer.
Absolutely. It was 4 to 5% during the 1950s. We had, prior to 1987, Reagan, we had 9 periods where we had growth above 5%. We've only had one since. And why is that? Because of the growth of government.
Yes. And it's interesting, Tom. I mean, I'm glad you touched on this, because one of the arguments I'm hearing from some of my liberal friends, and believe it or not, I do have friends that are Democrats and liberals, and they say, you can't, why are we cutting government spending? That's part of GDP. And if you cut government spending, you're going to have less growth. Well, that's true as maybe an accounting point of view, but people forget. I'm going to say something very nice about a Democrat. When Bill Clinton was president, when we had a Republican Congress, in a lot of ways, Bill Clinton was one of our most fiscally conservative presidents. We actually reduced the government spending from 22.5% of GDP to 18%. And yet the private sector economy boomed. The stock market boomed. Same thing happened, as you said, under Reagan. So this idea that somehow cutting government spending is bad for growth, that's ridiculous.
Greg Kelly here with an urgent retirement warning. President Trump's return is set to usher in a new golden age, but growing trade tensions and China's ruthless attack on the dollar have rattled the markets. That's why Warren Buffett just dumped $133 billion in stocks. And so too have Jeff Bezos, Larry Page, and even Jamie Dimon, CEO of the world's largest bank. That's why thousands of informed IRA and 401k savers are now shielding their savings with gold. And the experts at Colonial Metals Group are the only folks I trust to help you to do the exact same thing, especially now after Rich Dad Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki warned of a coming market crash. So visit freegoldguide.com/Kelly or call 800-655-5186. You'll get a free gold guide on how to bulletproof your wealth with gold tax-free. Plus, see if you qualify for a free home safe and as much as $7,500 in free silver. Once again, that's freegoldguide.com/Kelly.
Subtle results, still you, but with fewer lines. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Can you feel it in the air? That sudden shift of mood? It's the perfect time to shed the winter blues and experience the revitalizing qualities of driving a Lincoln. It starts with the Lincoln Spring Sales Event. So step outside and visit your local Lincoln retailer or Lincoln.com for some seriously mood-enhancing offers on current and past Lincoln models. Your transformation awaits. Learn more at Lincoln.com.
Empower Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risks. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
No, look at what Argentina's done. It's cut its government spending by 30%, and now it's looking at a 7.1% growth rate. Because all government,
Sorry, Tom. Are you saying are you saying that was in Argentina?
Yes.
Yeah.
So all government growth.
Malay. Yeah.
All government spending comes at the expense of tomorrow, and sooner or later that catches up with you. And so that's what we're facing now. If the great Milton Friedman, what he said, the true taxation is what government is spending, because you either pay for it in inflation or taxes. And I'm so disappointed in so many of my right of center friends right now decrying Trump, saying, oh, he's ruining the economy, yada, yada. And I say to myself, he's been there 2 months after one of the worst sugar highs in the history of government spending. And you didn't think there would be some sort of correction. Now, like you and I agree on, you and I agree on tariffs.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm in full agreement with you, Tom. By the way, I want to make sure my listeners know that this is Tom DelBaccaro, who's one of the smartest political minds I know. And at one point in his career, he was the head of the Republican Party in California, which is a tough job. But what I was going to say is you're so right that, when Reagan came into office, it took him 14 months to get the economy straightened out. Once he did it, once those policies hit, boom, as you said, we had 4 or 5, even quarters of 6% growth. So it does take a little time to get this done. And I love 80% of the stuff he's doing so far, which are very pro-growth, which is why I'm a little mystified that the stock market has fallen, because I think they're not taking into account the very positive contributions to our economy and to our businesses from a pro-business president.
Yeah, absolutely. And our mutual friend Larry Kudlow talked about this. The good that he's doing far outweighs the temporary problem related to tariffs. He talked about that last week. There's one thing about, and I'm curious, maybe I could ask you a question on air. American jobs were driven out of this country by the heavy hand of government regulations and taxes. And it won't be enough just to pass the tariff to bring them back. We have to bring that tax burden and regulatory tax burden down in order for them to stay here long term. And I think they're not advertising enough of what they're doing. I'd love your thoughts on that.
Well, that is a great point you make, Tom. And the fact is that we need to be very serious and honest with the American people. I mean, we are entering an age of robotics and artificial intelligence that's going to change the world and our country in a massive way, just like the internet did, maybe even more so did 25, 30 years ago. And, I'll tell you this, Tom, and for our listeners, I just became an investor in a company that builds homes with robots. I mean, the robots are incredible what they can do. They can build a home 35% faster with 35% less manpower, and 35% cheaper than conventional houses. And I'm not talking about, I'm talking about you put in the architecture plan and these robots will build the house for you. Not entirely, but the point is, what is that going to mean for construction workers? These factories, why is there this romantic vision? Oh, these factory, but we want to save all the factory jobs. When I grew up in the early 70s, my parents took me to Detroit and we went into the steel factories, the auto plants. Those were like, I don't want to work in one of these factories. Those are really tough jobs. Those were really, really tough, almost, jobs. So my point is, I think, Tom, that the jobs of the future this is why we have to have an educated workforce, because it's not going to be working with your lifting heavy equipment and stuff is using the brain, and we got to have smart workers.
Yeah, and we have to have. This is why how ludicrous was it putting Kamala Harris in charge of AI, the AI revolution.
Right. She knows nothing about it.
Money flows to where it is welcome, and the United States needs to be that most welcome place.
Yes.
And your regulatory structure has to allow it. Yes, no Republican ever says, "Oh, we should have no regulations," but you got to have the balance. I talked for years in California about you're driving manufacturing to India and actually polluting worse than if you had a sensible set of regulations here, and then you would develop the clean energy of the future in California because you'd have demand for it there because you actually had existing businesses. So that really, it bothers me that we're not talking enough about, but look, you and I both get the media. The sensation sells. They want to talk the market down. They believe Tim Walz does the right things. And so I'm hoping this administration spends a little bit more time advertising what it's doing so that people can hear it directly. Remember, Trump got elected in 2016 on Twitter going directly to voters. They need to go around the media scare of the stock market. I mean, think about it. Where else are you going to have your money in the world?
Yeah.
And yet they're scaring the market down.
So one last question for you, Tom, and then I'll let you go. Appreciate you carving out some of your time on a Saturday afternoon. The tax cut. The tax cut is front and center. Every Democrat in the House of Representatives 3 weeks ago voted for a $4 trillion tax increase, which is just despicable, in my opinion. But how important do you think this tax cut is, and why isn't Trump talking more about it?
Look, I've never understood the mentality of having tax reform with an end date. You either believe in what you're doing or you do not. And again, money goes to where it's welcome. They should, without this re-up of the existing reform, remember, the only people really getting a tax cut are tips, Social Security, and overtime. Everything else is staying stable. And why did so much money come home? Because we had a stable system for a decade. We need a stable system going on. And Steve, what really worries me about these Republicans today is they don't understand. Economics doesn't change overnight. It takes about 6 months. Remember, you and I talked about this way back in 2017. I said those tax cuts aren't going to bear fruits for 2 or 3 quarters. And of course, that's how long it took. They need to pass this yesterday so that by the beginning of next year, all these fruits come together. And so without this, the continuation of the existing tax base, the Republicans will be thrown out in 2026.
Yeah, that's why they got to get going. And that's why I have people like you, Tom DelBaccaro, come on the radio show, because you are give sage advice. And so thank you very much, Tom DelBaccaro. His book is called, what is it again?
The Lessons of the American Civilization. Yeah. I appreciate being again, on with you.
Okay. Thank you, Tom DelBaccaro.
All right. Bye-bye.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.